I never expected that a family reunion at 43 could bring about such significant changes in my life. My name is Laura, and until recently, I felt quite confident in my abilities. I've shared my life with Greg for 16 years. Our relationship is strong. We don't have children. We have fulfilling careers and enjoy a comfortable life. Everything had settled into a rhythm. Predictable. Easy. I didn't think much of it until that night. It was a typical Saturday when Monica, my sister-in-law, decided to host a gathering at her home to celebrate the 23rd birthday of her eldest son, Jake. Jake has always been known for his charm, intellect, and remarkable maturity. We've always had a unique connection, something I couldn't quite name. He's my favorite nephew, and I've often said that if I ever had a child, I hoped he'd be just like Jake. Without children of our own, he filled a quiet space in my heart. The evening unfolded with the laughter and noise of a close-knit family. Dinner was delightful and wine flowed easily. Greg, ever the social drinker, relaxed quickly into the familiar warmth of family chatter. By the end of the evening, his eyelids had grown heavy. I wasn't surprised when he leaned over to whisper he needed help to the car. Before I could respond, Jake appeared beside me, his voice soft, asking if I needed assistance. That small gesture shifted something subtle but real. "Thank you, my friend," I whispered, appreciating his calm presence. With Jake's help, we guided Greg to the car. The low hum of the engine mingled with Greg's sleepy murmurs. Jake and I shared a quiet, 25-minute drive filled with conversations about his graduate work, his ambitions, and the person he was becoming. I listened closely, proud of him in a way that reached deeper than I'd expected. When we got home, we laid Greg down gently, removed his shoes, and tucked him in. Jake waited respectfully at the door. I thanked him sincerely, unaware of what those words would set in motion. As I closed the bedroom door, I softly called him by the wrong name. "Ethan," I murmured without thinking. "There's nothing, dear Aunt Laura," Jake said with a gentle smile. "I'm here for you always." In the kitchen, he handed me a glass of water. His eyes were searching, guarded. I could sense he wanted to share something but wasn't sure how. "How are you doing, dear?" I asked gently, sensing a quiet storm beneath his calm. After sipping the water, he finally spoke. "Aunt Laura, I'd like to talk to you about something special. Do you have a moment?" His tone startled me. I nodded, unsure. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture from his boyhood. "There's someone I care about deeply, but it's complicated." The age difference alone makes things hard to understand. I smiled, trying to ease his mind. "Jake, emotions aren't always simple, but you can always talk to me." He paused, then looked up. "There's more," he said. "I'm married." That revelation took the breath from my lungs. "You." I couldn't finish my thought. "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "We've been drifting apart. This other person, I care about them deeply. In a different way. Unique. Does this person know?" He nodded. "She does. And it's you." I froze. The words floated in the air between us, sharp, surreal. "Jake, I'm married to your uncle," I began, but he stepped closer. "I know, and I know it's not right. I've tried everything to let go of these feelings, but I can't. You've always meant something more to me. At first, I thought it was admiration, but now I know it's different. I feel alive when I'm near you." I couldn't speak. The world felt like it had tilted, a floor disappearing beneath my feet. This can't be happening," I finally said. "You're young enough to be my son. This is not right. I've dated. I've tried, but no one compares," he said, pain in his eyes. "I respect you. I always have, but I can't lie to myself anymore." "Jake," I whispered, "this isn't just about us. This affects Greg. Our family. It's not fair." "I know, and I'm sorry." He stepped back, breathing heavily. I could feel the heat rise in my face. Confusion, anger, But underneath it all, an undeniable current I couldn't name. I asked him to let this go, but he stayed. He didn't move. The scent of wine and his cologne hung in the air between us like a fog. I looked at him, the boy who once clung to my leg during family picnics, now a man with eyes that saw too deeply. "This has gone too far," I said, though my voice trembled. And then, in a moment I didn't expect, I leaned forward, pressing my hand against his chest, but not to push him away. Instead, we paused, time slowed, and I felt my fingers slip into his hair. What had we done? "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but I don't regret telling you." "I do," I said truthfully, "because it makes everything harder now." He stepped back, his gaze still locked on mine. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I just couldn't pretend anymore." We stood in silence, and then I spoke. "Jake, this needs to end here. We can't allow it to change everything. There's too much at stake." He nodded, his face solemn. "You're right. I just needed you to know." His sincerity disarmed me, and in that moment, the air shifted again. Less heat, more sadness. "Find someone who makes you feel alive, but doesn't destroy your world," I said. "I hope you find peace too, Aunt Laura." We hugged. A goodbye that wasn't really a goodbye. The door clicked shut behind him. Alone, I stood in the kitchen. My thoughts raced. The kiss lingered in my mind like a whisper I couldn't quiet. I stayed awake most of the night, torn between regret and temptation. The next day, Greg stirred beside me, unaware. When he asked how the evening went, I shared only the safe pieces. Ethan, that name had slipped again, a name tied to emotion more than blood. My sister called. Jake hadn't said anything. Days passed. I found myself dodging him at family gatherings, yet his gaze always found mine. He offered gentle gestures, respectful, restrained, yet waited. He seemed to understand I needed space, but it was clear he hadn't given up. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Greg finally learns the truth. At home, Greg continued as usual, caring, affectionate, unaware. His love had a purity that both soothed and suffocated me. Every hug, every brush of his hand reminded me that I was slipping. Jake, meanwhile, kept his distance, physically at least. His presence hovered like a shadow. At night, I'd think of his words, of what might have been. The conflict consumed me, a rope stretched thin between two lives. When he looked at me, it wasn't lust. It was knowing, a mirror I couldn't avoid. One afternoon, I found myself alone in the kitchen when Jake walked in. The air thickened. Neither of us spoke. His eyes searched mine. I looked away. "We should talk," he said quietly. "We've talked enough," I replied, but my voice lacked conviction. "I don't want to lose you completely," he said. I shook my head, tears threatening. "You never had me." But didn't he? His hand hovered for a moment, then dropped. "I'll give you space." But I meant what I said. That night, I told Greg we needed to talk. He looked at me with soft eyes. "Is everything okay?" "No. And I need you to come home. Now." As I ended the call, I stood near the door, heart pounding. Because some doors, once opened, don't close again. Greg arrived home with his usual calm presence, stepping into the hallway with concern written across his face. He set his keys down gently, his eyes searching mine as if he already knew something was wrong. "Laura, what's going on?" he asked, approaching cautiously. I stood still, arms crossed, the weight of the moment pressing on my shoulders. "There's something I need to tell you," I said, each word slow, deliberate, echoing in the space between us. He sat down on the edge of the couch, waiting. "It's about Jake." His brow furrowed. "Is he okay?" I shook my head gently. "He's fine, but something happened. Something I didn't see coming. And I need to be honest with you before it spirals into something worse." Greg's face stiffened as he braced himself. I told him everything. About the night of the birthday party, the ride home, the talk in the kitchen. The emotions. The kiss. My confusion. My regret. I didn't try to soften the truth, nor did I dramatize it. I gave him the moment as it was, raw, flawed, unfinished. As I spoke, I watched his face shift through disbelief, hurt, and something quieter, recognition. When I finished, there was a long silence. He leaned back slowly, exhaling through his nose. I always noticed something between you two, he finally said, voice low. My chest tightened. Why didn't you say anything? I trusted you. I thought maybe I was imagining it. And maybe I didn't want to believe it, he said, eyes focused somewhere far beyond the room. Do you have feelings for him? I hesitated. It's not that simple. He nodded slowly. Is it ever? I sat down next to him, careful not to close the gap too much. I didn't plan for this, Greg. I never meant to hurt you. But it happened. Yes. The silence that followed was different this time, heavier, slower. As if time itself had paused to let the weight of everything settle around us. Greg finally stood. I need space to think. I understand. I'm not angry. Just shaken. I need to figure out what this means for us, he said, already moving toward the door. When it closed behind him, the sound rang through the room like a bell, sharp and final. I sat in that silence, trying to breathe. Outside, the sky had turned gray and rain began tapping softly against the windows. The days that followed were both quiet and uneasy. Greg stayed at his brother's place for a while, giving me the space I didn't ask for but desperately needed. I went through the motions, work, errands, polite conversation, but nothing felt real. Jake didn't reach out. I suspected Greg had said something to Monica, but no one in the family spoke to me about it. At least, not directly. There were glances, hesitations in tone, a subtle shift in the way people greeted me. One afternoon, a letter arrived, handwritten, from Jake. Dear Aunt Laura, I've kept my distance because I wanted to honor your choice. I know the last thing you need is more confusion, but I also can't pretend the moments we shared didn't mean something to me. They did. They still do. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted to say thank you for listening, for not turning away when I revealed something so difficult. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. No expectations. Just a quiet space where you can be yourself. Always, Jake. I sat with the letter for a long time, unsure what to do with the honesty between the lines. I placed it in the back of a drawer, not out of shame, but to protect it from getting lost in the shuffle of life. Later that evening, I called Greg. Can we meet? I asked. Sure, he replied. Let's talk. We met at a quiet cafe. Neutral ground. He looked tired, but open. I apologized again, and he listened. Truly listened. I don't hate you, he said softly. But I don't know if I can go back to what we had. I don't either, I admitted. We talked about everything, our routines, our emotional distance, how comfortable we'd grown in silence. In some strange way, Jake's confession had pulled back a curtain neither of us wanted to admit was there. I don't know what comes next, I said. We'll figure it out, he replied. Or we won't. But we owe it to each other to try. Weeks turned into months. Time moved forward. Greg and I went to counseling. We unpacked years of complacency, overlooked needs, the invisible ways we'd grown apart. Jake faded to the edges of my day-to-day life, but not from my thoughts. We saw each other occasionally at family events. He kept his distance, always polite, never pushing. There was no more talk of what had been shared. But every once in a while, our eyes would meet across a room and that moment would flicker back. Not with longing, with knowing. One afternoon, Monica hosted another gathering. A cousin's graduation this time. I hadn't seen Jake in over 2 months. When I arrived, he greeted me with a soft nod. No tension, no awkwardness. Just the quiet grace of someone who understood how to let things be. Later, we found ourselves alone for a brief moment in the hallway near the kitchen. Hi, I said. Hi, he replied, hands tucked into his pockets. Have you been? Better. Focused, he answered. You. I'm learning. He nodded. I'm glad we talked that night, he said finally. even if it shook everything. So am I said, because it woke me up. We stood in silence again. A peaceful one, this time. Take care, Aunt Laura. You too, Jake. He turned and walked away, and I knew in that moment that chapter had truly ended. 6 months later, Greg and I sold the house. Not because we were separating, but because we both needed a new start. Something that wasn't tied to memories or familiar shadows. We moved into a modest apartment in a different neighborhood. Smaller, simpler, warmer. Our relationship had changed. Less about shared habits, more about choice. Every morning we chose to stay, to work, to try. And though some wounds still ached quietly, there was also healing. Jake sent me a message a year later, letting me know he was moving overseas to take a job offer in Europe. It was the kind of opportunity he dreamed of. I replied simply, "I'm proud of you." His response, "Thank you for everything." And that was the last we spoke. But not the last I thought of him. Some connections aren't meant to last forever in action. Some only last long enough to remind us who we really are. They open windows where we once built walls. They pull us from autopilot into awareness. And sometimes that's enough. Years later, on a quiet evening, I stood by the window of our apartment. Greg sat reading beside me, a blanket across his knees, the dog curled at his feet. I thought of how far we'd come, how strange the path had been, how many moments nearly broke us. I thought of Jake, young, sincere, brave in ways I hadn't been at that age. I hoped he was well, happy, at peace. Then I turned to Greg, brushing his arm softly. "I'm glad you stayed," I said. He looked up at me with a smile that held everything: hurt, forgiveness, love. So am I. Because in the end, we didn't survive the storm because we ignored it. We survived it because we faced it. Together.